Are the Sooners making the right call?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so go hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Locked On Sooners is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay is traveling for work this week, so it's kind of hit and miss getting us both on the show, but I got you covered for today. Michael Hawkins is set to start for the Oklahoma Sooners against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Brent Venables revealed that in the Rudy's Barbecue Coaches Show on Monday evening. And listen, I don't think it's the wrong decision. I think it's the right decision to make. He's not put you in a bind. He hasn't played as well as you need him to play because of a lot of factors, but one, he's just an inexperienced quarterback at the collegiate level, still finding his footing. And as we can see, the offense is not really playing well. And I think it's a totality of things. It's not just a Michael Hawkins thing. There's a lot of reasons why the offense is not doing well, and we'll cover some of those in the second segment. But let's just talk about Michael Hawkins real quick. Here's what Brent Venables had to say about Hawkins when he mentioned that he was going to be starting against South Carolina. He said, Mike has shown a lot of really good stuff, both in his limited time against Tennessee, and he had some really good moments where he did some good stuff against Auburn, and even against Texas, he did some good things and some things where now we see if we can learn from it. And I think that's a fair place to be. Michael Hawkins has done some good things. There's a lot to learn from it, a lot still where he can grow. I think a lot of this comes back to the coaching staff having a trust in Michael Hawkins to protect the football, which we know is very important to the coaching staff. It's one of their core values as an offense. At the same time, you can also see that, listen, he's not hurting you so much. Yeah, that fumble hurt you. That was also just a really, really good play by the Texas defender to knock that ball loose from behind. Hawkins had scrambled up the field, just has to do better at protecting the ball as he's being contacted. And that's something he'll learn from. One area that this offense needs to improve is just creating opportunities for Michael Hawkins to have some easy throws. So much of it is based on him making the correct read down the field. Well, if we're having a hard time seeing things down the field, if we're having a hard time making the right read down the field, create some easy swing passes to the running backs just to get him a feel, right? Create some wide receiver screens. I think they only ran maybe one wide receiver screen against Texas, if I remember right. Just looking at the passing pressure and depth, he had 5 throws behind the line of scrimmage. That's not bad. I mean, he was 5 of 5 for 21 yards. So you're not getting a ton of yards after the catch on those throws, but it's an efficient throw for him, right? When he did throw the ball, he was efficient. He was 19 to 30, 63%. That's not great, but it's not bad either. And then when he threw the ball 0 to 10 yards down the field, he was 11 of 12. 10 to 20 yards down the field, he was 3 of 4. So, I mean, again, it wasn't bad. And this also doesn't take into account some of the throwaways. I mean, it kind of removes some of those on-purpose throwaways from his stat sheet. But listen, he can be an efficient quarterback, and he could be a good quarterback for you. You just have to build some things into the offense that take some of the decision-making out of it. Because, listen, it's a true freshman quarterback against a really good defense. And listen, they've seen good defenses each week that he's played. Tennessee, Auburn is a good defense. They've got some really, really talented players on that Auburn defense. Obviously, Texas is a good defense. They'll see another really good defense against South Carolina this week in Norman. And so you've got to build some things into the offense that allow your playmakers on the outside. Listen, they may not be very experienced either, but you got some guys that can make some plays, whether it's Brendan Thompson because of his speed and quickness. Zion Kearney is showing that he's going to be a reliable playmaker in this offense, given more and more opportunities. JJ Hester, he's got size, he's got speed. Continue to get these guys the ball in space. See if you can let them get the ball and make a guy miss and create some easy yards for your offense. If you do that, perhaps it opens a few things up down the field. But you got to throw more. You got to throw more of that short to intermediate, short stuff. Like, again, he was good in the intermediate stuff, but when defenses don't fear the run game and they don't fear your downfield passing ability, they can play 10 yards and into the line of scrimmage because they don't worry about you going over the top. They only had one throw, 20 or more yards down the field. That's not really going to be good enough. And yeah, he was under pressure on quite a few of his dropbacks. If we go back to Pro Football Focus and look at the chart, on 40 dropbacks, he was under pressure 21 times. And when he was under pressure, he was just 5 of 12 for 38 yards. Not great. Not terrible, but not great. When he was kept clean, he was really good. 14 of 18, 110 yards, but only averaged 6.1 yards per attempt. So, again, some of it is, that deep ball to JJ Hester down the sideline that was in the end zone, but overthrown. That's the kind of stuff we need to see more of, because it doesn't require him making sure that there's no safety help coming over the top. It's just a throw that's either your receiver's going to catch it or nobody's going to catch it. And you've got to figure out a way to back defenses off the line of scrimmage, back defenses off of the short to intermediate stuff, and you've got to throw the ball down the field. Hawkins has the ability to get the ball there. We saw it against Auburn, right? The big 60-yard completion, like 55 of that was air yards. And if they can find a way to create more opportunities like that, I think it does open some things up. That being said, this is still a true freshman. We've talked about letting true freshmen make mistakes, just living with the consequences of playing a young quarterback. And some of that is going to also be some of the indecisiveness that we've seen. Again, it's not all on everybody else to get better. Michael Hawkins has to continue to get better as well. And he will. This is a guy that has gotten better every year in high school. He's gotten better at different times. He's shown some really good things. It's just now he's got to pull the trigger. When he sees things coming open or he anticipates things coming open, he needs to be ready and willing to pull the trigger and make the throw. Part of it also is you've got to back defenses off so that when that short stuff is there and you're anticipating making that throw, you can make the throw because the defense isn't sitting right on top of it. So it's a lot that has to continue to improve, and it's a lot really for the entire offense that can get better. Will it get better against South Carolina? We'll see. I mean, that defensive front, man, is so fast and they're so physical and they're so athletic that if there's one thing that Michael Hawkins can take away from the Texas game, you can't run away from everybody, not in the SEC. You had the one run against Auburn that you did run away from everybody, but after that, you had a hard time doing that. You're fast, but there's a lot of fast guys, and they can erase your speed with good angles at different times. So a lot to learn from. Troy Everett said this after practice on Monday night. He said, Mike's been awesome. For an 18-year-old kid stepping in this environment, he's been unbelievable. He's taken over. He's meeting with the O-line. He's meeting with the running backs, wide receivers. He's taken over. By looking at him and the way he prepares, you wouldn't expect that to be an 18-year-old. So listen, the team believes in him. The coaching staff believes in him. Michael Hawkins has great belief in himself. So you kind of just have to ride it out a little bit. And there might be a time or a situation where you have to go back to Jackson Arnold during this season because you're going to play in some big games, big environments against some tough teams. But for right now, continue to ride Michael Hawkins and see if he can continue to improve and help this offense find some more efficiency, some more consistency, and maybe a few big plays here and there. Can't live and die with the big play. You got to find efficiency. That's the most important thing right now. And Oklahoma's offense just hasn't been efficient. But that's on Seth Luttrell, Joe John Finley to figure out. And if they can't figure it out quickly, it could be as bad of a season as we think it could be at this point. The Oklahoma Sooners had a player-only meeting on Monday. everything's got to get better. Offense, defense, special teams, everything has to get better moving forward. Also, the Sooners dropped out of the polls. We'll discuss that in the third segment. But yeah, coming up next, we'll discuss what the players only meeting could mean for the Sooners and more next here on Locked On Sooners. Hey, Sooner fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over $10,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go directly to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm supporting Eli Bowen. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Eli Bowen the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers. Again, we're free and available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Locked On Sooners is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners had a players-only meeting on Monday. And listen, when things are down bad, you kind of have to find a way to circle the wagons, no pun intended, Sooner fans, and figure some stuff out. Some of what happened on Saturday was, especially in that second quarter, when things started to go bad, they started to unravel for Oklahoma. They unraveled both offensively and defensively. And after halftime, things were a little bit better. They were a little bit more under control. Things didn't really improve offensively, but they weren't hurting themselves on either side of the ball. The tackling, for the most part, got better. They were a little bit more locked in. They didn't really give up they gave up the one big pass play on the throwback wide receiver throw. But other than that, like, it seemed like it improved, but that second quarter really sunk you when you give up 21 points off 2 turnovers and a big long touchdown drive. That hurts. It hurts bad. And so, the players, they've got to rally. The coaches can only say so much. The coaches can only harp on them so much. The players have to take ownership and be responsible and accountable to their performances. I mean, it wasn't all bad. I mean, that first quarter, it's 3-0 Oklahoma, and in large part because the defense is playing awesome. The defense is keeping Quinn Ewers off balance. The defense is, stopping the run. They're tackling well. They're putting themselves in a really good position to get off the field. They're getting off the field on third down. I know Quinn Ewers missed some throws on wide open guys, but that was a lot of because of the effective pressure that Oklahoma was getting from their defensive front and their linebacker core on the blitz. Like, some of that was because of Oklahoma's defense. They were affecting Quinn Ewers. They were getting him off his spot, making him throw on the move. And when you don't have your feet settled under you, or you're under pressure, sometimes you're going to throw and it's going to be a bad throw. And so as much as, Texas fans want to talk about how Quinn Ewers wasn't healthy and he, had bad footwork, blah, 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 good pressure creates bad footwork. That's just football, right? That's why the New York Giants were able to affect Tom Brady in 2 Super Bowls, because of their really good pressure, especially up the middle. Good pressure affects footwork, creates bad footwork. So, it wasn't all bad against Texas. It was a lot bad. You didn't win the game. You got blown out again. At the same time, there's a little bit you can build off of, and hopefully you can rally from coming up this week against South Carolina, because again, you're going to have a different kind of quarterback, a more athletic quarterback, someone who's going to be able to hurt you with his legs and can throw on the move, but he's not as good as Quinn Ewers. Lenora Sellers is not as good as Quinn Ewers, and the South Carolina team is not as good as Texas. But we've seen the South Carolina team can beat good teams if we're not careful. And Oklahoma is not necessarily a good team, So Oklahoma can certainly get beat, even though they're coming into this one as favorites. Not really. They're kind of actually more underdogs. If you look at the line, it's Oklahoma -2.5. But when you play at home, Vegas typically gives you 3 points for being the home team. So if you want to look at it as a neutral site game, Oklahoma would be a half-point underdog going into this game. So all things being equal, go into this one thinking Oklahoma's the underdog because they're kind of playing like the underdog. Everything's got to get better. Everything does. There's not one area that you can look at and be content with. I think there are certain players, individuals that are playing good football that you can be happy with their development. We talked about some of those on yesterday's show. Zion Kearney, Eli Bowen. I think Jaden Jackson's playing well. Grayson Halton, I think, is playing well. I think we're seeing good things out of the linebacker core still. I thought that, Robert Spears-Jennings, he kind of got lost on some tackling stuff, but overall played fairly well. I think your leadership needs to step up and play better. Your Danny Stutzmans, your Billy Bowmans, I think the offensive line has to continue to get better. I was looking at some stats yesterday for an article I'm working on for Sooners Wire. And I mean, here's where Oklahoma ranks offensively. They're number 125 in total yards per game out of 134 FBS teams. They're 101st in rushing yards per game, 123rd in passing yards per game, 118th in first downs per game. They're averaging just 3.4 yards per carry on the season. That's 114th among FBS teams. SB Plus over at ESPN likes Oklahoma's offense a little bit better. They're 59th in the nation, but that's not good. That's not up to expectation for Oklahoma. For Oklahoma, you expect to have at minimum a top 20 offense. Pro Football Focus, in their grading system, that they try to use the film to help influence their grades. Oklahoma is number 128 out of 134 FBS teams. They're 128. That's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Max Olson shared that Oklahoma's offense lacks explosiveness. On X yesterday, he talked about how they have the second fewest plays of 20 yards or more this season. Only 13 plays of 20 yards or more, which is 133rd in the country. It's not good. But like I said, earlier, it needs to be less about explosiveness and more about efficiency. Efficiency, will create explosiveness. If you're efficient, if you are hitting the easy things, if you're hitting the 5-yard run, if you're hitting the 4-yard run, if you're, getting the short passing play for a first down, if you're creating first downs, the explosiveness will come. It's Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you build your offense and it is efficient, if you have an efficient offense that's able to move the ball, explosive plays will come. You can't live and die on explosive plays. They're high risk, either because it's going to be an incompletion or it's going to be a interception or whatever. You can't just say, hey, we're going to get more explosive plays. That's like saying you're going to get more turnovers. Obviously, you want more turnovers. Obviously, you want more explosive plays. But if that's your game plan, that's not enough. Because if the explosive play is not there, then it's not there. But if you create an offense that gets you 5 yards a play, 6 yards per play, and then you hit an explosive play, or you're throwing a pass play for 10 yards and the receiver is breaking a tackle and going for 20, or your running game is creating a 20-yard run for you, that's great. But the explosive plays, again, are more than just throw the ball downfield, let's get a completion. Those are hard. Those are hard to complete, especially for this Oklahoma offense. And so we've got to create more efficiency, got to build out an offense that's going to make things a little bit easier on your quarterback, that's going to try and take advantage of some of the speed that you've got on the outside in a Brennan Thompson, in Zion Raggins, Jaquays Petaway, JJ Hester. Take advantage of a guy like Zion Kearney, who's got some really good after the catch ability, from his time in high school. He's shown a few things so far this season. Again, he led you in receiving against Texas. The true freshman did. So get the ball to your guys in space, whether it's on a screen play, a drag route, a little crosser, something that allows them to try and make a guy miss and move the ball upfield. Trying to throw it 15 yards down the field, right now we're not connecting on those. We're not finding the open guy on those, if there's an open guy. We're not hitting on our deep, the deep attempts, or we're not taking as many deep shots as we need to be taking to try and soften up the offense. The run game has to improve. You can't average 3.4 yards per carry at Oklahoma and be content with it. Again, some of that is the sacks they take in, that gets averaged into that, but a lot of it is just your run game's just not been efficient. Against Texas, let's look at it real quick. Against Texas, Javonte Barnes averaged 2.7 yards per carry. Gavin Sawchuk a little bit better, 2 carries for 9 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. Taylor Tatum, 2 carries, 17 yards, 8.5 yards per carry. Oklahoma averaged just 3.7 yards per carry against Texas. Not good enough. It's not. They only made 8 missed tackles forced. They only made Texas miss 8 tackles. Not good enough. And had just 2, 3, 4 plays of 10 yards or more. But they also had 2 fumbles, right, in the run game. Taylor Tatum had 1. Michael Hawkins had 1. Again, true freshmen. They're going to get better. They're going to learn from it. But you got to have more. Everything has to improve. Defensively, they have to be more consistent tackling. You can't have a quarter where you just decide you're not going to tackle anymore. Defensively, I mean, there's guys that just don't need to be on the field right now. I don't know if Woody Washington is still hurt and injured or what, but man, he's struggling. I thought Billy Bowman played one of his worst games as a Sooner. He might have graded out well according to Pro Football Focus, but he just overran so much in the run game. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good. Texas, from that second quarter on, kind of did whatever they wanted to do offensively against the defense. And, we talked about it. So much was said about how Tennessee pulled back in the second half against Oklahoma. Texas kind of did the same thing. And Oklahoma's defense didn't really have to do as much. So, as much as the defense is what we're hanging our hat on right now with Oklahoma, they've got to play much, much better. They've got to play more consistently. And they've got to be the unit that is your strongest unit. You can't go a whole quarter and just decide not to tackle. They had 15 missed tackles. That's not going to be good enough. That's not going to be good against South Carolina, who again has some really skilled offensive talent. But you also have to have an offense that can score some points. Because if you don't have an offense that scores points, honestly, it won't matter how good your defense is, because you could lose 3-0 against South Carolina. And I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying that unless the offense improves, it could be one of those kind of games. The Oklahoma Sooners fell out of both polls. We'll talk about what it means coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook right now. The Oklahoma Sooners are considered 2.5-point favorites going into their matchup with South Carolina. Again, as we talked about, if it were a neutral site field, South Carolina would be a 0.5-point favorite going into this game, which basically it's a coin flip game going into this week. And I can't tell you where to land on this. I would probably avoid it altogether. If you're looking at maybe placing a bet on either Oklahoma, South Carolina, or just this game in general, you might look at that over under, which is set at 40.5, which is super, super low. But given Oklahoma's offensive struggles, I can't say that's not a bad line, at least to take the under on. So go to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So the Oklahoma Sooners fall out of the USA Today coaches poll and the AP top 25. It's the first time they've been out of the AP top 25 since the end of the 2022 season. The Oklahoma Sooners in the coaches poll are the highest vote getter. So they're technically 26th in the nation in that one. It's deserved. Oklahoma got the win over Auburn, but how good is Auburn? Probably not very good. And yeah, you're just not a good team right now. You've got a lot to prove as an offense. You've got a lot to prove as a program before the coaches or the AP voters will have trust in you again. Win against South Carolina would go a long way to restoring some faith in the Oklahoma Sooners football program. But I think even among Sooner fans right now, and you guys can tell me in the YouTube comments how you're feeling about it, but I think this is the lowest probably anybody's felt during the Brent Venables era. 49-0 sucked, but you could also look at that game and you're like, well, if Dylan Gabriel's playing in that game, you're probably not getting shut out and you're probably not getting beat 49-0. At the same time, you don't know the direction of your quarterback situation right now. At least in 2022, you had Dylan Gabriel coming back and you expected to have another year of Dylan Gabriel under your belt. So you felt like if I improve the defense, then with Dylan Gabriel and the offense, we should be fine. Because the offense was good in 2022, aside from that, Red River Showdown game. But right now, the direction of your quarterback situation, it's Michael Hawkins' team. Can he improve enough to give Oklahoma fans, AP poll voters optimism about the direction of the program? Because as much as I want to tell you that it's not all on the quarterback, that everything has to be better, the quarterback is the face of the program. It's the face that recruits look to, that transfers look to determine, hey, I want to go play with that guy. It does matter. And Michael Hawkins has a lot to show over the next, how many games? 6 games. Hopefully a bowl game in there as well. And he can either show that he's the guy for 2025, or Oklahoma is going to have to either go into the offseason in a quarterback competition with Hawkins and maybe Arnold, or they might have to go into the portal. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying that's going to be the thing, but over the next 6 games, it'll determine a lot about the future of the Oklahoma Sooners football program. It'll determine a lot about who the offensive coordinator is going to be in 2025. It'll determine a lot about who the quarterback's going to be. And it'll determine, I think, the level of trust that Oklahoma Sooner fans have in Brent Venables and the direction of the program moving forward. I think it's easy to sit here and say, let's get rid of everybody, just, clean house on the offensive staff. Nothing's working. It's all going terrible. But I don't necessarily think that serves you well right now. Let's look at Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, right? How often did they turn over the offensive coordinator, and how much did that affect Baker Mayfield? It affected him a lot. And so if you're hoping to develop your young quarterbacks to finish the 2024 season strong, keep some continuity somewhere, right? Keep continuity with your play caller. If you've got to just adjust your scheme a little bit or adjust your thought process, then by all means do that. If you got to give Kevin Johns a little bit more voice in the room, by all means do that. But changing the play caller right now, I don't think necessarily serves Michael Hawkins well. I don't think it serves the team well right now. Maybe it could. Maybe you could have a Purdue-like situation where you move on from Graham Harrell and the offense suddenly has an explosion. I don't know. Maybe there's some disconnect between Seth Luttrell and he's just not seeing what Michael Hawkins does well and attempting to do that. But yeah, all in all, I feel like having continuity is the thing that's best for your young quarterback. If he was a more experienced quarterback, if he had 3 years under his belt and it's just not working, we've seen production from him in the past and it's just not working, then I can understand an argument for changing the voice. But for right now, I want to just kind of ride this thing out and see where it goes, because I don't think it can get much worse. I don't think you're as bad as what you showed against Texas. Maybe you are, but I just think maybe that's a really good Texas defense that made you look that bad. But against South Carolina, maybe you can do a few more things. Again, it's a good South Carolina defense, but I don't know if it's as good as Texas. Maybe against Ole Miss, you can do some things. Again, a good Ole Miss defense But the rest of the schedule, I mean, the defenses are good, but are they going to be as good as Texas's defense? I don't know. But with more snaps, more experience, more opportunities, more time with Seth Luttrell as the play caller, perhaps it could create a developing Michael Hawkins. Perhaps it could allow for him to develop more. Whereas if you change the play caller this week and it doesn't work and it's actually worse, then where do you go? You don't really have any other option at that point. So better to have some continuity, stick with what you got, maybe give a guy like Emmett Jones some voice in the offensive room, because good passing game coordinator at Texas Tech helped them have a lot of success through the air. Help him, or let him get involved. Let him speak to what Michael Hawkins and the wide receiver room do well in the passing game. And I don't know, just change some things up a little bit. I think everybody's kind of grasping at straws right now for how to fix Oklahoma's offense. But so much of it comes down to they got to find an efficient running game. They've got to find some efficient pass plays in the offense that can hopefully create some big plays in the passing game. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Locked On Sooners. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. And until next time, Boomer Sooner.